Greetings from my side, greetings from Aaranyak and our co-organizers, the Guwahati Hub of the Global Change Makers and IWP, India Water Partnership, who is a part of the Global Water Partnership. This is the fourth event in a series of webinars that we have been holding since September 1st week this year. And the main objective of this series of webinars is to empower the young generation, the youth groups, to participate in water management. And to enable them to do that, we need to imbibe them with information and knowledge about water. And we know that there are various dimensions, a variety of aspects of water, which connects us to water through so many ways and channels. And therefore, we have selected some very basic fundamental aspects of water about which we are trying to give more information and exposure to our young students, activists, and researchers. We have already organized 3 different webinars. Today, it is our 4th webinar. And in this webinar, we have a very important subject to discuss about. It's very important because we are going to talk about groundwater. It is all the more very important because out of many other aspects of water, we probably know least about groundwater. We have experienced, we have heard, we have experienced that groundwater is depleting. We have heard that there are problems of contamination of groundwater. And we all know that we get most of our drinking water from groundwater. And therefore, we need to be very careful about the water that we drink. And there is a thriving market that provides us with myriads of so many ways of having safe drinking water, safe and filtered and pure in drinking water. And there are many ways of motivating people, encouraging people to buy different kinds of water treatment systems, different kinds of water filters. And because we are very concerned about the quality of water we drink, we invest any amount of money in getting whatever the best quality of water we can get in our areas, in our locations. And therefore, it's the subject of groundwater, drinking water, the economics and socioeconomic, the question of socioeconomic, empowerment, equality, equity, so many things are involved. We have heard that although Assam is virtually rich in water, but there are very serious problem of groundwater, both depletion in quantity and both of quality in terms of contamination. How is it happening? How much do we know about the groundwater that exists in Assam? Where is the groundwater stored? We don't see groundwater. Therefore, we do not know much about groundwater. And therefore, we don't value groundwater. So we are very liberal in using and wasting groundwater. So the crisis in groundwater, which is rampant in many other parts of India, is also catching up with us in Assam or in Northeast India. A 2019 report by IIT Kharagpur was an eye-opener that Assam was placed along with other many water-sparse states in terms of first depletion and of groundwater. Therefore, we consider that groundwater is not only vital for our lives and livelihoods, and also for agriculture. And now there are people who have started saying that probably we are using too much of groundwater in agriculture, and therefore scientists now emphasize that our cropping practices should be such that our crops should be such that they do not consume too much of groundwater. So to discuss these and many other aspects of groundwater about which we do not know, or maybe we do, even if we tend to know, we do not know probably scientifically correct facts and figures. And therefore it is very important, it is high time that we have a serious discussion about what is the condition of groundwater in our state. How is groundwater being managed? Who is managing groundwater? What are its problems? What are the challenges? What is going to be the future like? And what we must do to conserve, to use sustainably the precious groundwater resources that nature has endowed this state with. And therefore, for this very purpose, we have a very eminent scientist and researchers, educationist and teacher, Dr. Runti Choudhury, who is with the Department of Geological Sciences in Gauhati University. We have her as a main resource person to talk about this theme. Now I request Himadri Gogoi to give a brief introduction to our guest speaker and our resource person, Dr. Choudhury.
Thank you. So we will now have a discussion on status and issues of groundwater and its management in Assam by Dr. Runti Choudhury. Dr. Runti Choudhury is an assistant professor in the Department of Geological Sciences, Gauhati University. She received her master's degree in geology from Gauhati University and her PhD from IIT Gauhati in 2018. She was the recipient of the Fulbright Nehru Doctoral Research Fellowship 2014-15 and conducted a part of her research work at Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory of Columbia University, New York. She has over 15 years of experience working in the water sector in Assam. She has been actively involved in a number of community-based projects focusing on wash issues in rural Assam. Welcome, ma'am. And over to you, Partha sir, now.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope, Ruti, you have some kind of a PPT, or do you have a presentation?
Yes, I do have. I'll just start with that.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Das, for inviting me for this important initiative of where you're engaging youths as message bearers in this water governance in Assam, and for taking this important mission forward. And thank you, Himadri, for your introduction. So I have a small PPT. I understand that I have around 30 minutes of time. So it'll be, I'll go with very basic, and then speaking on some of the very specific issues of water quality in Assam. So I hope the presentation is visible to all of you.
Yes.
All right. Okay, so status and issues of groundwater and its management in Assam. So
can you go to the slide presentation mode? It will be better.
Yeah, I'm already in the slide presentation mode.
Okay, somehow we are not seeing it in that mode, but anyway, it's up to your convenience. Seeing it. It's very...
Is it okay now? It's already in the presentation mode. Is it okay?
I don't know, Pranav, you have seen it in the presentation mode?
No, sir.
No, exactly. It is still in the... Slide mode,
If it become problematic, then it is okay, no problem.
Then it's okay. Then it's okay. Then it's okay.
No, I've already put it in the.
Yeah, sometimes it happens. If you do that on the other end, it appears in the basic mode. So,
okay.
But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's still
Right.
quite well readable. Yeah.
Okay, so the contents are like I would speak with first talk a little bit briefly about giving you a brief understanding of what we understand by groundwater. And then talking about what water quality is, what we understand when we say we are talking about water quality. Again, a very brief on water quality parameters. Then I'll discuss about the status of groundwater development in Assam, and then status of groundwater quality in Assam in terms of stating and discussing that in terms of water quality, where we stand and what are our major concerns. Then we'll discuss briefly about, again, groundwater management options here. And then I'll be discussing the conclusion. So let us first understand what groundwater is. I do again assume that we all keep hearing about this two term, surface water and groundwater. But then to understand groundwater, I would it is that water. If we break this particular term, ground and water, it is that water which occurs below the ground level. Okay, so if you look in this particular figure over here, which is taken from the USGS Geological site, what you see here is you have this ground surface, and below that you have this unsaturated zone and the saturated zone. Groundwater, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Runti, are you changing slides? We have not. We are still. Okay, we are in the slide number 2. Is that right?
We are in slide number 3 now.
No, we are not seeing the slide number 3.
Why is that happening? Let me share again.
Okay. Yeah.
Ma'am, you can try the reading view mode. That would help.
Is it working
rather
now?
than slide showing.
Yeah, it's coming now.
It's coming now?
Yes.
Is it visible now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. So what we have here, a little bit of a technical glitch. So I hope this is visible to all of you. Okay. So not all water that occurs below the ground is assumed as groundwater or is groundwater. There is a specific zone which within which when water occurs, that is your groundwater. So if you see here in this particular figure, what you see is an unsaturated zone, and then you see a saturated zone. Now, if you see here, the saturated zone, this blue is marked in blue, as opposed to the unsaturated zone, which is gray in color. It means that all water in the all zone within the saturated zone is filled up with water, as opposed to the unsaturated zone, where the pore spaces. Now, what happens that within the subsurface, the rock layers or the rock particles, they exist as aggregates, okay? And when they exist as aggregates, what happens is there are some pore openings, there are some open spaces within them. So in the unsaturated zone, the pore spaces are filled up mostly with air, and sometimes it's also called as the zone of aeration, as opposed to the saturated zone, where all pores are filled up with water, okay? And so that basically is the groundwater, and that is the water which we normally extract or for our all different purposes. So there is another terminology that I want to mention, that is, what is an aquifer? Now, we have understood that within the saturated zone, whatever water occurs, that's the groundwater. Now, within the zone of saturation, not all kinds of rock layers or rock stratas or your formations would be conducive to hold water. I mean, there are some specific type of rocks or water-bearing formations that we call, or in other words, we would say that as aquifer, I mean, which holds this water for us, okay, and which act as groundwater reservoirs. I would not be going much into the detail of it, but just for you all to know that those are called aquifers, and those are reservoirs which gives us water, and from where water is extracted. And there are two specific characteristics of these reservoirs or of these aquifers, and those are, they are highly permeable and porous. Now, these two terminologies, it has to be porous because the water has to go through it. I mean, whatever precipitation we are receiving as rainfall, that first falls on the ground and then seeps down to the ground surface and eventually goes and meets the groundwater reservoir. Okay, so unless there is porosity and permeability within the rock layers, I mean, no way the water could get and contribute to the groundwater reservoir. Now, I'll stress on this particular fact when I somewhere make a point on this groundwater depletion issue. Okay, so that's broadly about your, roughly about your groundwater and the aquifer. So I would now show you this two baffling images. So what is happening globally is, in terms of water resource, a lot of focus has now been given, like in the past 2 decades or so, on more so on water resources per se, and the focus on groundwater has been it's only just a few years of like roughly 5 years or so, 5 to 6 years or so, that a lot of emphasis is given on groundwater. The main reason, as Dr. Partha has already stated, that we have the liberty, or we liberally, I mean, we take the liberty of misusing this particular resource, more so because this is a resource which is not visible to us, as opposed to the surface water resources, which are visible to us, which are easily quantifiable, in contrast to the surface, to the subsurface or the groundwater reservoirs. So numerous reports have been published time and again, stressing and stating that the water crisis scenario or the water security issues globally, and also among which even India is one of the states within those different different regions globally which are under water stressed, and then there is this report which states that by 2025, I mean, our condition is still going to be much grimmer in terms of water stress. And when I say water stress, I mean both from quantity as well as from quality perspective. Now, this particular image, these are from South India, and this from probably from Maharashtra, where you see these people lining up to get, I mean, drinking water from this particular tanker. And you can well imagine, I mean, the situation these communities or these people might have in terms of water stress. And now yet another image that you get to see here, this was from 2019 from a tribal village in Maharashtra, where you can see this particular woman, she's walking down, or she's battling a severe water crisis. She's rappelling down a 6 feet long well to get water. I mean, the water level at one point probably was higher up over here, but then over the years that has depleted and has gone down. And I would also want to make state that in cities like Delhi today, in many areas in South India, in Maharashtra, and we are also somewhere, getting there, the state of Assam also, of course, not entirely the state of Assam, some pockets within the state of Assam, we are also getting there somewhere in this row of water depletion. So clearly we have this issue of, I mean, quantity issue per se. And then along with the quantity issue, I mean, sometimes what happens is that we are a region which is, we are endowed with a lot of water resources in terms of the surface water resource. We have this major river, I mean, Brahmaputra, flowing across the state. And we have also in terms of the groundwater resources, you will see in one of my slides that where, we are not a state who has developed a groundwater resource as much as most of the other cities across India. You will see this particular figure given by Central Groundwater Board, but yet we reel under water crisis, because when I say water crisis, we reel under drinking water crisis, because the water is there, but we cannot go and use that particular water, and we look at from the perspective of water quality. So this is another, I mean, this famous rhymer, water, water everywhere, not a drop to drink. This is a particular line from this ancient rhymer by Samuel Lee Coleridge. He used this particular line where, roughly around the 1800s, he was there in his ship in the middle of a sea where, he was all around surrounded by sea, but yet he couldn't have the water because the water was saline. So clearly, I mean, this depicts that, you have this quantity, but yet, I mean, in terms of your potable drinking water, you have to meet certain water quality criteria, and only then that particular water would be fit for your consumption. That is, I mean, true for both surface and groundwater resources. So clearly, having stated that we have a major, issue of water quality, let's try and understand what water quality is. Like, I mean, when we say the water quality of a particular water body or of a particular water source is not up to up to a standard limit or is not fit for consumption, how we say that is based on certain parameters, okay, or certain characteristics. So water quality, it can be thought of as a measure of the suitability of water for a particular use. When I say particular use, I don't know how many of you have a background in, water resources or similar line. I am just assuming that we are a mixed group here. So some of this would be very basic for all of us. And but yet I have put it here so that, to set the context right. All right. So it is a measure of the suitability of water for a particular use. When I say particular use, the use could be drinking water. The use could be for industrial purposes. The use could be for agricultural need. Okay. And how we do that is we do that based on certain selected parameters or characteristics, which are the physical, chemical, and biological characteristics. I'll briefly state about, I'll not go into each of these parameters, but roughly discussing what physical and chemical parameters, what we mean by that. Physical, as in the name states, it has to do with where you're using your sense of sight, smell, a sense of touch to decipher a particular characteristics. Among those, turbidity, color, taste, odor, temperature. I mean, you don't really need any sophisticated instrument or anything. You can just take a glass of water and just by your naked eye, you can have an idea, a fair idea about if that particular water is turbid or not turbid, or the color of the water. Sometimes we see that when we are taking a glass of water, it's reddish in color. We can just state that, okay, this color is, this particular water is reddish in color. And I mean, we would not take a glass of water which has some color in it, okay? Chemical parameters are those parameters or those characteristics which need certain analytical procedures to go and quantify, okay, this particular water sample has a pH of 7 or 6. We cannot do that unless we use some instrument. It could be a portable instrument or a lab benchtop instrument, okay? And bacteriological characteristics are, again, which are not visible to the naked eye. We would still need some method to quantify or to state if a particular water source is bacteriologically contaminated or not. So this is roughly about our water quality. So just to give you all an idea about the turbidity issue, you have three different samples of water here. And clearly when we see these three samples, we can have a fair idea about the first water sample being not turbid, then this middle one being a little turbid, and then we see the third sample, which is where we can clearly state by just using a naked eye that this is a turbid water sample, which is not fit for consumption. So, and again, a brief on, I mean, how we are stating that there are this series of parameters, physical, chemical, and bacteriological parameters contaminating our water sources, both surface and groundwater sources. However, these water sources or this contaminant sources or this pollution sources are divided into two different categories, natural and anthropogenic. So we keep hearing, or there are numerous reports. I mean, from the past 2 months, I have been seeing a lot of, reports, specifically in the Assam Tribune, stating that we are a state where there is a lot of contamination of arsenic, fluoride. Like we all have heard this particular terminology, or there is a lot of, and some reports also stating that there are sporadic incidents of uranium in groundwater in certain pockets within the Brahmaputra Valley. So, I mean, how do or from where do this water gets this particular contaminant? We have natural or geogenic or anthropogenic source. Natural or geogenic are those, sources which are naturally there. When I say naturally there, if you can just assume that the rainfall is falling on the ground surface, and then that particular rain is seeping down and going and meeting the groundwater reservoir. Now, while it seeps down, you have to understand that it passes through different rock stratas or different soil strata. Now, if this soil strata or this rock layers are enriched in any of these different contaminants, I mean, say if it's an arsenic-bearing mineral or arsenic-bearing rock, or it's a fluoride-bearing rock, or it's a rock enriched in iron mineral, I mean, there is a process called wall rock interaction or like water rock interaction. So what happens is there is this process of leaching, there is this process of dissolution. I mean, to keep it very simple, I would not go into these technicalities. I would just state that there is this process where, these minerals are getting leached or getting released from these natural rock bodies enriched in any of this contaminant and seeping down. And while it seeps down and meets the groundwater reservoir, it takes this contaminant along with it. Okay, and anthropogenic is something which is created by man. Something like if it's a mining area where you have this acid mine drainage problem, which is a huge issue in Meghalaya. That's a neighboring state. And so there's a lot of this coal mining happening. So the groundwater in such kind of terrains could be enriched in a lot of sulfides or again a lot of arsenic per se. But for us, when I say that our water quality problem is more so about fluoride and arsenic, I mean the contaminant is geogenic. I mean the source of this contaminants are geogenic contaminants. These are, I mean, very rarely we would say that, I mean, anthropogenically our groundwater sources are getting affected by these contaminants. Okay. And just to, in this particular schematic, again, you get to see that septic tank effluent, cesspool effluent getting, I mean, septic tank effluents can sometimes also leach down and contaminate our groundwater resources or groundwater sources, particularly if your drinking water source is adjacent to the septic tank. So ideally, there should be a gap of roughly 1 meter or more between your septic tank and your drinking water source. So those are, I mean, some ways in which which our drinking water, groundwater sources can get affected. Now coming to the status of groundwater in Assam. So this is taken from the Central Groundwater Board report, which they published in 2013. And after that, there has been no such reports which have been published. So there are, what you get to see here is annual replenishable groundwater resource. So the term replenishable is, I mean, annually 27.23 billion cubic meter of, I mean, that's the volume of water that gets recharged into the aquifers in Assam, okay? The groundwater aquifers. Then there is another term, which is net annual groundwater availability. Now that volume of water that is getting recharged, okay? But you cannot take the entire 27.23 billion cubic meter of that entire volume of water. Nobody can extract out that entire water because there is a term called a static water reservoir, again, and as opposed to dynamic. So what you get to see here is 24.89 billion cubic meter of water, which is groundwater availability. I mean, that volume of water one can take out. But what we are doing is annually, there was a draft of roughly 5.44 billion cubic meter. So basically, we are taking only that volume of water. Draft is extraction. It could be pumping for drinking water need. It could be for irrigation purpose or whatsoever purpose you're taking out water from the groundwater reservoir. That's basically your draft. So based on these figures, we come to the stage of groundwater development, which during 2013, it was roughly 22%. And when you have 22%, I mean, we are somewhere around the safe stage. I mean, there are this series of stage: overexploited, critical, semi-critical, and then safe. So in terms of groundwater development, Assam is set to be in a stage where we are safe in the sense that we still have groundwater. I mean, as a resource, we are still surplus. Like we are not doing enough with the groundwater resources. Okay, but a major concern is, so why in spite of having a surplus or why in spite of having so much of groundwater, we still face depletion? Why is it that every, I mean, non-monsoon, I mean, during, I mean, the city of Gauhati has to, I mean, most of us, even I, here in Bora service, what we do is we have to depend on the tankers to supply water to us. The reason being is, I mean, there is a dirt, and this dirt or this depletion is only specific to certain pockets within Assam. It's not across the state of Assam. Okay. So now coming to the other problem, one fact is established that we do have the resource. The second issue is the quality issue. Why, in spite of, I mean, having so much of resource, we are not being able to extract out water or not being able to use the water is because Assam reels under a serious water quality issue in terms of arsenic and fluoride. Why, in spite of having iron and bacteriological and effluents from sewer networks and septic tank, I'm stressing on arsenic and fluoride because these are the two, major concerns that we have in terms of drinking water. Iron, it's inherently there in the soil in Assam, and because of that, even historically, if you look, and even today, any household that you visit in a rural area, you will find that, I mean, sand filters, in every household, every household in rural Assam, I can say that for sure. I mean, why we have that is because even historically, this iron was there, and people have found out one way of this slow sand filter of this giving charcoal and sand and pebbles, and then you have this two. Some people have two sand filters, some have one, and that's how they can at least get rid of the excess iron within, of course, not up to 100%, but to some desirable limit, and then they use it for their different needs, if not for their drinking water needs. I would be specifically focusing my discussion on arsenic and fluoride, showing you a few maps and discussing that what are the major health implications because of consumption of water, because of arsenic and fluoride. Bacteriological contamination, I would only discuss that is also a major issue because specifically during the monsoon, what we get to see is that we get that Assam reels under a lot of people, specifically a lot of children in the tea garden area. What they do is they face diarrheal deaths due to diarrhea, okay, under 5 mortality, and specifically due to diarrhea. Of course, there are other reasons as well why these diarrheal deaths happen, but one of the contributors is because of consumption of water with bacteriological contamination. So what happens is the water source could probably be in an area which is prone to an area where there is open defecation, or probably to a septic tank where the water source, because of this monsoon flood, gets affected. And when that water is getting consumed, this little children, they catch diarrhea very, very easily. So iron and bacteriological contamination, I would only speak that much. Arsenic, now that is a major concern that we all have. So it's basically through the dissolution of minerals and ores. As I just stated a while ago, it's a geogenic contaminant. And arsenic, a little bit of chemistry. I mean, it occurs in 2 different forms. Specifically, there are 4 forms, but then, 3 different forms. But then in water, it occurs as the trivalent arsenide form, which is more toxic, more mobile, and as opposed to the pentavalent form, which is less toxic and less mobile. And depending on, whenever we would be using any treatment technology to treat arsenic contaminated water, it's basically the arsenic 3 or the arsenide that we tend to remove. So the source of arsenic, as I just said, if the rocks are, enriched in arsenopyrites, mispickel, or like realgar or piment, and if the water or the groundwater, which is recharged or getting recharged or is seeping through the rock layers, comes in contact with this arsenic-bearing minerals, arsenic gets leached, or it gets the dissolution occurs, and the arsenic gets released into the groundwater systems. Anthropogenic, as I just said, more so in the mining areas. We don't really have this here in Assam. Or up until now, there is no report of anthropogenic contamination of arsenic in groundwater in Assam. And the health consequences, like why are we at all worried about? We are not much worried about having iron in groundwater. It's there, we take care of it, okay, at least. But then in terms of arsenic and fluoride, there is a lot of concerns because let me also state that these are all pictures from our neighboring country, which is Bangladesh, and which is one of this country which has the huge incidence of arsenic contamination in its drinking water. There are initially, if you consume water with arsenic contaminated, like for a long period of time, you have the skin licenings that you can see over here. There would be spotted license over here, and there are numerous studies and reports which have very on humans as well, which have very clearly established the links between arsenic and cancer, high incidence of cancer. So, and also in Assam, there are a lot of groups now, very recent groups who are trying to look into the high cancer incidences in Assam and trying to relate it if it's due to a high arsenic in groundwater. Although there are no conclusive reports as of yet. Just to also let you know, please let me know if I ensure that I don't exceed my time of 30 minutes. So
I will let you know.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so the limit of arsenic in drinking water by WHO is 10 microgram per liter. So if the source has the arsenic measured value above 10 microgram per liter, it is deemed unfit for consumption. But then it's only unfit for drinking, but you can still use it for your washing, for cleaning, for bathing, for all other purposes, but just that not fit for consumption. Bureau of Indian Standards, we earlier had it at 50 microgram per liter, but now it has been, to the last 5 years back, they have also endorsed it to 10 microgram per liter. So A few facts about arsenicosis. That is not a disease. It is basically a symptom. When I say arsenicosis, I mean this initial stages, okay? When one starts to slowly develop the skin license. That's not a disease, it's a symptom. It's not communicable. And the symptoms are manifested only after prolonged consumption of your arsenic contaminated water. And it has been seen that, I mean, there are reports which have shown that nutrition, it plays a decisive role in the prevention or early onset of arsenic related ailments. By that, what we mean is, I mean, say the water source has arsenic the concentration ranging 50 microgram per liter or more, or like beyond 10 microgram per liter. And along with that, you're consuming that drinking water as that is drinking water, and you are still also taking, I mean, nutritious food. I mean, green leafy vegetables, or all kinds of nutritious food that you can imagine. I mean, that can somehow, you know, mask this, or prevent, prevent communities from getting these ailments. So, and there are reports which have established that. And I'll come to this particular point in my next slide again. So this is roughly about the situation in Assam. So like way back in 2004, we first, Professor Singh, he first established that there was arsenic contamination in Northeast India. But it was only during roughly between 2007 to 2011, where there was this comprehensive, exercise which was done by IIT Gauhati, UNICEF, and Public Health Engineering Department, where they tested around 56,000 sources all across the state of Assam, and where they came up with this particular arsenic concentration map, contamination map, and where they got that, that out of those 56,000 wells, 29% sources were exceeding the WHO limit of 10 ppb, and 8% sources were exceeding the BIS limits of 50 microgram per liter. So now, the point of showing you this particular slide here is because this particular study, it formed the basis, for all studies that we are doing now. I did a lot of work, not a lot of work, but some work during my PhD. Now my PhD students are taking up. There are a lot of institutions today all across Assam who are doing, are doing this study. The basis of those are this particular, areas where, this particular map here or this particular study here. So what you get to see here is this particular red marks that you see here are all arsenic concentrations in groundwater sources. These are all tube well sources, okay? Public health installed tube well sources where the arsenic concentration limits are above 10 microgram per liter. And the blue ones are safer, which is less than or equal to 10 microgram per liter. So the point that I made just a while ago about this nutrition plays a decisive role. So what is happening is all across Assam, you have the sporadic pockets of high arsenic. But this Titabar area over here, you have arsenic concentration reported as high as 800 ppb per 800 microgram per liter. That is like 100, many-fold higher than the permissible limit, okay? But yet, when we tried looking into, going into among the communities and trying to look at the health implication of these communities, we rarely could find, communities or people within the communities, where they were affected by or where they had serious consequences because of high arsenic in groundwater or consumption of, drinking water laced with arsenic. However, I would also want to stress this particular point here. There are other groups who are also trying to look into this particular issue more intensively as of now. But then there are no reports as of yet, which states that, that there are issues as such, serious health ailments because of, such high concentrations of arsenic in groundwater. Now, coming to fluoride, which is another major issue, and there are a lot of health implications which are visibly there, where people are, young, kids, they are getting mottled teeth. They are getting knobbed knees, where the knees are getting bent. There are young youths who are getting bent because of consumption of groundwater laced with high fluoride. The first reported case of fluoride in Assam was way back in 1999 in Karbi Anglong, and after that there are more and more areas are getting explored as of now. This was an initial map that we created where the higher incidences of concentration values as high as 23 mg per liter can be reported in Karbi Anglong, Nagaon, and also in the peripheral areas in Gauhati, Bonda, Birkusi, those areas adjacent to Kamrup or adjacent to Gauhati city are laced with very high concentrations of fluoride in groundwater. So when I say mottled teeth, so these are a few pictures. Of course, this is not from Assam, but this particular figure that you see here or image that you see here is from Hojai district in Tapajuri village, where you can see this young little these kids getting knobbed knees because of, consumption of high fluoride water laced with high fluoride. And there, as I just mentioned a while ago, yes? Yes?
Hello, why is there noise? Is anybody asking anything or making noise? Runti, please continue.
Yes. So more and more districts like Dhubri, Udalguri, and Nalbari, even in those districts, there are incidents of fluoride in their groundwater sources. So clearly a major issue when you see this, nobody would want, these things to happen to their kids. And so there are a lot of, individual projects as well to try to look into this. But however, there is this successful project by this particular group. I forgot this particular NGO where, they have taken these particular subjects and they are facilitating them with good food or good nutrition. Food which are enriched in calcium, and there are reports which have stated that this condition have got reverted back to they're trying to fix this particular problem with good nutrition. So that is just one information over here. So I just forgot the name of this particular NGO. They're doing very good work in Nagaon area, specifically with these communities. Okay, so these are numerous reports that, these two that I get to see, these are very recent reports of 2021, where we get to see that water in 14 districts of Assam are affected by arsenic, fluoride. In terms of arsenic, I can for sure say that it's not 14 districts, it's much more than that. But for fluoride, perhaps, there are still more districts which are getting added to the list of fluoride contaminated, to the list of districts with fluoride contaminated groundwater. And thousands are affected by groundwater arsenic contaminated in Northeast. Of course, this is by the water minister. He just made this statement sometime, probably in the month of August. So clearly we have a major issue of water quality, and that basically of groundwater quality, and that is something which one has to look into. Like, how do we avert, or how do we take care, or how do we mitigate these issues? So in terms of the mitigation initiative at the government level, and also today we have the government of India taking up the Jal Jeevan mission, where there is a lot of emphasis. The main objective of the Jal Jeevan mission is to provide safe drinking water to communities within India and the nation by 2024. And within the Jal Jeevan mission, a lot of emphasis is given on groundwater conservation, on rainwater harvesting, and on recharge structures, on artificial recharge of groundwater. So of course, artificial recharge of groundwater would depend on how stressed your region is, and also on the feasibility of, can we go and artificially recharge, the groundwater reservoirs in Assam. Of course, a lot of studies would be required for that, but a lot of emphasis and a lot of effort is being made across India, where Assam is also a part. So in terms of the government of Assam, their public health engineering department, they are providing robust pipe water supply schemes, where in all areas, for Titabar, there is a lot of, across Assam, you have this pipe water supply schemes, where it could be a groundwater source, a safe groundwater source, or a river source from where water is being brought down into this treatment systems, and treated water is facilitated to the communities through pipe water supply schemes. Then slow sand filters, these are some rural filters that we get to see. So there are a lot of groups who are trying to, modify or trying to scientifically improve these sand filters. Then rainwater harvesting system, of course, rainwater is getting harvested, which is arsenic and a fluoride free and iron free, of course, drinking water source. And sometimes this rainwater harvested in these particular tanks, if there is also a potential where, you can extend this and you can get this particular water fall into a recharge well, which is basically a well which would take the water the rainwater to a groundwater reservoir. Even that is being promoted and emphasized. And then this is again, a picture where from 2012 roughly, where this is a barge from where the water was getting taken from the Disang and from the Dhansiri and the Doing River. And this particular plant, it's a multi-crore project, in the Titabar area. If you remember the arsenic concentration map, you could see that the Titabar area in Jorhat is an area which has a very high incidence of arsenic concentrations in groundwater. So this was an outcome, or this was one of the mitigation initiatives taken by the government of Assam, by the Public Health Engineering Department, where they were trying to facilitate arsenic-free drinking water to a design population of you can see it's more than 19 lakhs. 1,90,000. So this is about all about the mitigation initiatives. And also, I would also want to stress the fact that the pipe water supply schemes, the water source could be a surface water body, or could be a river water, or in some cases, if there is no river, they try to do it from a deep drilling. They do deep borehole drills, and from there they try to take out arsenic and fluoride free water and try to treat that and supply it to different communities. So mostly they are relying on that, along with promoting rainwater harvesting, conservation of old tankers, restoring of wetlands. So all of those are being happening at, of course, at scattered level by different organizations, but more emphasis is on the pipe water supply schemes. So coming to the management options that we that are available for us in Assam, I would want to go from the bottom: regulate and control groundwater development. Why I'm putting this particular point, I'm emphasizing on this particular point, is because it's been almost 9 years that we have the groundwater control, regulation and management law. But then, up until today, the rules are not yet laid out, where, communities can really look into like what they are eligible to do and what they're not eligible to do. By that, what I mean is, see, today within Assam, 80% of rural population, they depend on groundwater. Although there are this pipe water supply scheme, although there might be a surface water reservoir, historically we are dependent on the groundwater resource, because that is seen as, when you have a particular plot of land, you basically own the groundwater which occurs below that particular land. There is no regulation or there is no control as such of the government or at the center, or of course at the state, who can really put a tap on how much of water you can use. So more so, this problem of depletion, as I just said, is a sporadic and is a very specific problem in a city like Gauhati. Where you see that there are certain areas, like I can for sure say about Bora Service, where I reside. We don't have any, we hardly have any water at our well here, but during the monsoons, we do get the water. So and this is a problem which is roughly from 6 to 7 years. The reason being, there is no tap on the amount of extractions the apartment buildings, or like we also at the individual level can, to the amount of water that we're extracting from the groundwater. So that is one. Now I'll go again from the top. Aquifer mapping along with its characterization. There has to be a more concrete, or there has to be a more, detailed mapping of the amount of aquifers. Of course, Central Groundwater Board is doing an amazing work. DGM is doing an amazing work. But then we need to integrate all of these, and we need to have a detailed aquifer mapping and its characterization within the state of Assam. Formulation of aquifer management plans. Like, how do you formulate these management plans? So I would want to bring in the concept of conjunctive use. Just because you have an ample resource, which is groundwater, you are aware that you have groundwater below your ground where you're residing, that doesn't really or mean that you would always be dependent on the groundwater. The emphasis has to be on conjunctive use. You are using both a mix of surface and groundwater resource, okay? And that has to come from the government or from a policy level where, communities are made aware of that. And this particular term, participatory management approach, because for any project, I'm emphasizing on groundwater, may it be an ecology project or any project that has to do with nature, or that has to, up and until you use the grassroots people or the Panchayati Raj institutions or the local communities, up and until you build their community, their capacity, none of these projects would ever be, you have an aquifer management plan, yet you might not have a success, getting it implemented successfully. So one has to also ensure that quantifying water availability and water quality. We do have that particular figure that I showed in one of the slides of roughly 24 point something billion cubic meter, but then that was in 2013. So is there anything new, or one has to really look into that? There has to be regular water quality monitoring. When I say regular, I mean sporadic. Of course, not entirely one can really do that, but in some few specific pockets, you install your monitoring wells and you keep on monitoring. Are there new sources which are also getting affected by any of these contaminants, or some new contaminants coming in? So, I mean, those are some options that we could look into in terms of groundwater management. At the individual level, we should put all our efforts to conserve. I mean, at whatever level we can. I mean, rainwater harvesting is something which we all can do at the individual level, and that is possible. I'll not speak much on that now. In Bangalore, you have this 100 million well recharge well project. Just Google that down, just to, if any of you are interested, and you will see that how a particular city, who was reeling under severe water stress, today have been able to restore some of its reservoirs, groundwater aquifers. So that's a classic example that I can put here. So probably we might also think of doing something like that. And in conclusion, one thing is, this particular initiative that has been taken up by Aaranyak and Global Water partnership. And so this is a laudable and initiative where, the youths, all of you are, roped in taking this particular, taking this particular mission forward of, taking care of our resources. So awareness generation, it's very important, because many a times what communities, they end up doing something which they shouldn't do, because, they are not aware. I can for sure tell again here that people in Titabar, there were some communities who were not using the treated water because they could get the smell of bleaching powder in the treated water, okay? Instead of drinking or using the treated water, what they were doing was they were again restoring back to the arsenic contaminated water. So there, awareness would be very important. Composite solutions like rainwater harvesting, water recharging, delineation and safeguarding safe aquifers, reuse and recycling. I don't know how much of us that is being done in Assam, but then, there are today cities like Bangalore, who are putting a lot of emphasis on this. Water saving technologies, smart technologies. Sometimes, of course, there is a lot, there is a long way for us to go where we would be putting meters in our, pumping system to actually see that how much of water we are actually extracting, okay? So those are some initiatives that we could take up. Trust on integrated quantity and quality assessment of water sources, both groundwater and surface water, followed by affordable and efficient treatment technologies. They are becoming increasingly imperative. We cannot do away with science. The household filters that's been historically used, can there be some more modification, or can that be replicated to some more easily affordable and efficient, to more, robust systems? That needs to be taken up. It has to be researched. It has to be looked into, and probably, it should be something which communities can manage. So with that, I would end my presentation here, and thank you so much. And thank you once again to all of you for your patient hearing. And if you have any questions, I am here to address those. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Runti. And I would say that was a very comprehensive treatment of the subject matter that was given to you. You exactly touch upon all the important points that we thought that would be important for our young audience to know about. So therefore, I would say that this lecture, as you know, we record these lectures, which will infuse our work as a reference, material for our students. This lecture will remain as a very important, very resourceful, source of information for all of us, not only for our young students. And for me, and I think for all our youth groups, I would say that, you try to find out what are the important messages that we will carry from this wonderful presentation. I think aquifer, quote unquote, aquifer is a very important word. Many of us have probably heard about the word, but do not know much about it. When we say that, ei thaikhonot pani nai, pani hukai gise, yat pani khandileo napao ami, yat deep boring corridor upon me. What is actually happening? We are actually referring to an aquifer. So groundwater is not an entity that exists everywhere, as you know, very explained in this presentation. So they are stored in particular stratas, particular layers. What is the condition of the aquifer from which I'm getting water? Runti has talked about aquifer mapping also. Some work has been done, but unfortunately, Runti, the common man, the citizen, doesn't know much about what is the situation with the aquifers. And very few people have heard about the word actually aquifer. What is an aquifer?
Right.
What we all know is a very nebulous kind of very smoky kind of idea about groundwater. We don't know where it exists, where it goes, where it comes from. So as you have rightly pointed out, public knowledge and mass education is very important to let people know about what is this groundwater, and how we get groundwater out of the earth, because we do not know about it, we do not value it, we don't even know what lies there. So that's the first part of it, which is very important for us to follow. And the second part of it, before I make this interaction open for others to ask questions, the last part of your discussion, and especially with reference to the citizens, what is the responsibility and duty of a common citizen? Not only to know more about groundwater, not only to sensitize ourselves. There are many ways of getting to know a lot of things about groundwater, including getting engaged in such programs or using internet, etc. But what we can do about it actually. So that is important from the point of view of this program, where our young groups can play a role. Definitely in disseminating awareness. Definitely, I have put a question in the chat box that based on what you have shown about different symptoms and disabilities caused by arsenicosis and fluorosis. If we see that some people around me in my town or city are actually exhibiting this kind of deformities, I should actually go and inquire about the quality of drinking water they are drinking. Right. Because these poor fellows, they do not know what they are suffering from. Unfortunately, our doctors are also completely illiterate. Most of our medical practitioners have no knowledge about arsenicosis, fluorosis. They don't know anything about it. They will probably providing treatment for something else. But what is happening with them is something else. So no amount of medication is going to cure you. You treat your water, you get good water, and you treat yourself. So that kind of awareness is actually very, very important. And also for cities like Gauhati, the whole issue of groundwater recharging through practices like rooftop water harvesting, etc. These are now well known, known well to citizens, and many people are practicing also. Government has made it compulsory for all public buildings to have rooftop water harvesting so that groundwater can be recharged, etc. So these are areas where the citizens can play a role. We as individuals can play a role. So I would emphasize that our audience carries these messages with them. Now I'm opening it to questions. Questions are, I ask that our young groups are there and they have a lot of curiosities, and they will ask questions to the speaker, and also which will open up vistas for further discussions. Please ask your questions, including our own core group organizers.
Hello. We have received one. Okay.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, Meenakshi, you are.
Okay. Good evening, ma'am. So one of the issues that I have observed in my area is urban water logging. It is like a prevalent issue since quite a few years, and it is imperative to say that it will somehow or other affect the surface water bodies. But does it have any? Does it pose any serious threat to the groundwater as a contaminant?
The water logging. I mean,
Yeah, due to the water logging, like, is there any chance of any toxic?
Well, see, you were talking about water logging in an urban area. So that is a problem which is basically not in terms of quality. There might be less effect in terms of quality, but then the effect will be more in terms of quantity. Because when you have this concretization happening, this water logging happening, what is happening is the water is not being able to go and recharge. It is not getting recharged. The aquifer systems are not getting recharged. So basically that could be a problem. Okay. But as per se for the water logging problem, I don't think so. There would be much problem in terms of contaminants getting into the groundwater reservoirs.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Next.
Good evening, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, Kimi.
Ma'am, I want to ask question that suppose I want to give example of my own house. So we have a pond which is dirty because we used to throw our garbages in the nearby areas. So sometimes I think that is it also contaminating the groundwater, because we have well, and of course we are not directly using water from the pond, but well, definitely it is taking the groundwater. But actually I always have the question that the contaminated water of the pond, is it also affecting the groundwater and also the drinking water of us? So are we going to have some health issues and all that? So the question always come to my mind is that what types of filters we should use to purify our water, because there are lots of advertisement about lots of filters, but no any proper guidance that okay, this should be used from the government or from any other agencies. So I have that question that is it going to affect our groundwater, that contaminated pond? And the next one is that what types of filters should be used?
Okay, so see, if your groundwater source is getting affected because of the pond water, that would depend on if you have a very shallow water level. I mean, in the pond, in the well, then there is a likelihood that your water level, I mean, the pond water is somehow coming and affecting your groundwater resource, okay, or your groundwater well. So there is a likelihood, and also depending on at what distance your well is from your pond. Okay, as I was just mentioning that there should be a gap of roughly 1 meter or more, if I'm not wrong. Yeah. So, that distance should be maintained. Okay. So if it's not, then there is a strong likelihood that yes, your pond water, murky pond water could probably, or is probably affecting your well water. And about the filter, of course, there are a lot of filter. We have the RO system, the membrane filters. However, again, that depends on the affordability. So I personally would never say a RO, although people do say that, it gives us a lot of contaminants are being treated by the RO systems, because within the RO, a lot of water is getting wasted. So, I think the most easy way that you could do is first get your well water tested, like for whatever contaminant it could have. The most common contaminant that it could have from a murky pond is bacteriological contamination. I don't think it would ever have, the well water would ever have a fluoride or a arsenic or a uranium contamination in it. But then there is a very high likelihood that it could have your bacteriological contamination. So get it tested. And if it's there, the first thing you could use a normal filter, or and then have another thing, at least for your drinking purpose, you could, boil your water. I would, that's possibly the most easy thing that I could suggest, rather than suggesting any particular filter. But an RO is a strict no-no. At least I would never promote an RO. So yeah, I hope I could address your question.
Next.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any other question?
Professor Runti, thank you so much. This was a very, very good presentation. I thoroughly found it very insightful and a very well presented issue that you kind of brought out. I am a public health professional, ma'am. So, in rural areas, we do see cases of fluorosis diarrhea and cholera. One of the biggest challenge that comes is that, health sector and something like the water, they do not come together. There is no convergence of both departments. So water testing, right? So in PHCs, in primary health centers and sub-centers, this is a work that the lab technician, the ANMs are supposed to do free of cost. They are supposed to go to their specific catchment areas. They're supposed to go get a water sample, get a sample tested, but it's nowhere done. And it's never even within the health agenda. So, I mean, where do you see, like, do you even see a possibility of some kind of convergence happening between both the departments? And if there is possibility, what are the ways in which we can do that? Bring both these things together, because they have to work hand in hand.
Right.
Because health otherwise would limit itself to, okay, the patient comes, the diarrhea patient goes to the person. Fluorescent comes, we try to manage it, but then the prevention aspect is somewhere lost. So
yeah. So that's again, thank you. But it's a very pertinent and a very good question on convergence. So in 2018, I worked closely with PHE and UNICEF, like on a particular Swachh Bharat program. And there, at that point in time, I could see that there was this one particular program, I'm not recalling the name, where they were establishing convergence with NHR, National Rural Health Mission, and with Sarva Siksha Abhiyan, where they were also taking the young kids into those programs. So I think, I mean, those are happening, but then at certain level, but then probably like not across, I mean, the state of Assam, or not probably across India. But then, of course, there are programs which are taking that into consideration. And there could always be, like if you are a healthcare professional, probably you could talk to your MD or a mission director and directorate, and can possibly, I mean, look up, as I was just mentioning, that there was this program in 2018 by PHE and UNICEF in Assam. You might dig down that, and you might probably come up with a similar idea and propose that to your, MD, and then they possibly could take it with the public. It's possible, and it's, I mean, people are doing it. Okay, so yeah, that possibly could be my answer on this. Yeah.
Runti, there is a question in the chat box. It asks, how do you think the proposal of the palm tree cultivation in Northeast India will affect the groundwater in Assam, particularly? Isn't it alarming? What can we do about it?
The palm tree cultivation, because I wouldn't really, I'll have to look into this, because I think the palm, because there are, somewhere at some point probably I've seen that palm trees are basically, they are in a way trying to keep the water level intact, rather than, contributing to, just like eucalyptus, whenever you see a eucalyptus tree in a particular area, it's said that that is an area where the water level, the groundwater level is shallow. I mean, the water level is, there is an enrichment of groundwater level. So in terms of even palm tree cultivation, if I can just recall, I'm not, again, I'll have to look into that. But then what my knowledge, what I have read is that, they basically keep the water level intact. So, I don't, if that is true, then I don't think so that could be a problem, in terms of depletion of groundwater level also. Of course, it would not add to, addition of water into it, but then it would not also have, lead to depletion of groundwater levels. But I have to look into this, okay? I'm really sorry. I'm not being able to give you a concrete answer on this. Varanya.
Yeah, I think why Varanya has asked this question is probably because, the whole question of encouraging cultivation of palm tree in Northeast India is actually facing a lot of criticism and resistance.
Right.
And we don't have good information from the experience of what has already happened in Latin American countries and Southeast Asia. So some people believe that in terms of I mean, these palm trees are also highly hygroscopic, means they absorb and exploit a lot of water, soil moisture. Soil moisture, making the whole area around them dry. So this kind of perception is there. But what you have said is important. I mean, sometimes there are wrong informations creep into public consciousness. So as a scientific organization or as a scientific program, we should also try to find out what is the correct information and what is fact, what is not a fact. As you have said, I would also have to now explore to what extent. I think if you find an answer in future, I think we will exchange. Yeah, because palm tree is definitely injurious to biodiversity and soil quality from many other aspects, even if not from groundwater aspects. So I think we need confirmatory information to conclude that this is actually highly water exploiting or
right.
Maybe, as you have said, not as intensely as eucalyptus, because of which these trees are actually avoided in high biodiversity natural forests. Any other questions?
Ma'am, thank you for the insightful presentation. I have one question regarding when you mentioned that about the mitigation measures regarding groundwater depletion, etc. So one point you have highlighted that household water treatment plants. Can you please elaborate something on this?
Yeah, right. Household water treatment plants, as in what I meant was like, you see, in every rural household that you visit today in Assam, you pick up any area, you will see that that particular household would always have a sand filter. You have this particular ring, and then you have this charcoal, this layer of pebbles, and then you have this sand, and then, the water is getting. That is a primary filtration they do even before, they would use a normal candle filter. Okay, so basically when I say households, there could be some addition. It's already being done. People are already doing it. They're trying to modify. They're trying to make it more handy, more useful. I mean, so that they don't necessarily need to do a second range of filtration, like improving on that rural technology. That's what I meant.
But those were not proved sometimes. That is, those are not as per the standard of the PhD guidelines or PhD guidelines or something like that, which can be filtered all the contaminated water or
right. As I just said, like whenever I was talking about iron, of course, there is no 100% removal of iron by using those filters. Hence, like some modification, so that some improvement to the technology, some scientific contribution where, that can be modified, because one point is that those are not very encouraged because a lot of bacteriological contamination sometimes happen in those filters. Okay, so some modification, that's what I was indicating.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I want to ask one question.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
I'm from Baheta Saril area.
Right.
And in that area, particularly in Baheta, Kamalpur, some industries are established, and there are lots of ash as waste generated. And they dump it on the agri-field. And I have apprehension that it may cause groundwater pollution. Can it pollute groundwater at a very depth, and it may contaminate all groundwater of that area? I have an apprehension.
Well, like that would again depend on, if the level of groundwater is shallow. I mean, if the water level is shallow, of course it can. Because see, I mean, it's ash. And then because we see that whenever there is a dumping site, we normally get to see that this lechitates are, again, with rainfall and everything, because rainfall is a primary source of recharge water to these groundwater reservoirs. They would at some point eventually carry, I mean, some amount of this, whatever contaminants are there within the ash. I'm sure there are. I guess there could be sulfur or, yeah. So yes, there is a
on-site case study actually required, and so far it was not done by, and we have applied to Pollution Control Board also, and administration, but it is going on.
Okay.
And as there is no case studies regarding this, and no one know actually, will it not affect or affect? Actually, we are in a dilemma that should it go on or not? If it pollute the groundwater, it should be stopped immediately, but it is not happening. So I'm also from an environment and ecology background, but I have no that kind of facility to study those parameters because I'm in a different line. But may I personally meet you for just for this purpose? Just I want to meet you to for a detailed discussion regarding can we sort out that any pollution is occurring or not? Can it be possible?
Yeah, you can. Like you can visit me in my department at any day. Like we are open now, so like Monday through Saturday. So you can just drop in. You can have my email ID from Dr. Das. You write to me for and then sure, yeah, that's possible.
It will be very great help for those communities, and because as I am also belonging to this area, we are continuously suffering from air pollution and other disturbances. So it is,
I think thank you very much. May I know your name? May we know your name?
Excuse me, sir.
May we know your name?
My name is Todrup Mozumdar. Todrup Mozumdar.
Okay.
TADRUP.
Okay.
Todrup
Mr. Mozumdar,
Mozumdar.
I think Runti, we should bookmark this question for future discussion.
Right.
This is interesting. But this has also reminded me of a very relevant fact. There was a IIT Gauhati study also corroborated by others, probably a couple of years back, that we all know that its entire stretch river Bhorolu is highly polluted by so many pollutants. But at certain stretches, there is extremely high heavy metal pollution. And near Bhorolu Mukh, I think that group of researchers got evidence that the heavy metals that existed in the surface water of Bhorolu River have somehow found their way into the nearest aquifer and contaminated groundwater there. So this is just one example of how surface pollution can transform into ground pollution. Also very relevant. I mean, it's happening, but as Mr. Mazumdar is right, we don't have area-specific case studies, so we don't know actually, right? Right? Anything else? Anything else? Right? Okay, I think it's time to conclude this discussion. And, my concluding remarks are that personally, I have learned a lot. Runti, thank you very much. There's a lot to talk about. There is a lot to discuss about. But what we liked about your presentation is each and every word you have, all your headings and subheadings and all the topics were very well chosen. So each and every slide was important for us, full of information and very, very pertinent, very, very relevant. So as I said, this lecture of yours is still, work as a good resource material for us and our participants. We hope in future also we will have occasions to invite you to have interactions with you. So we might be planning some other, work jointly for raising public awareness about groundwater quality, especially in the context of Gauhati. That is something that's we are planning now. So I hope we will have your support, participation, cooperation. That's with those words. I thank you again, and I hope that in the next session, whatever was said or discussed in this lecture will be discussed further by Manisha, Pranav, Himadri. This is the first part of today's webinar. Runti, if you have time, you might probably stay back for 5 or 10 minutes if you like to, and see how we follow up actually. Now now there will be breakout groups and people will be divided into groups. They will go into groups and discuss some of the issues that you have highlighted in probably more intensely, more intimately, and then they will reassemble and they will talk about what they discussed. Then probably Manisha will talk about how to creatively present your thoughts about a water problem and the solution, etc. So if you have time, you can please stay back. I will of course be there all along. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Please,
Yes, yeah. Thank you again for this opportunity, and thanks to Himadri, Manisha, Pranav, and all the participants, and who asked questions as well, and those who didn't, but still they're there. I would love to stay, but then I have a little toddler. I mean, he's not a reason for me to leave. He's just knocking my door. He's just 2.5-year-old.
We understand.
A long day, so. Yeah. So I would really love to, and I'm sure this is a very interesting program, and I look forward to being there, associated again over and whenever there's an opportunity. Okay, and thank you once again.
Thank you, Professor Runti.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
So Manisha, please continue.
Yeah. So hello everyone, and warm welcome. I am sure each one of you must have benefited from this particular session. It was a very, very interesting session, very insightful. Lots of insights came into our perspectives. So now this part, this 40 minutes that we have, we want to spend in breakout rooms where we would like to have a little discussion on how you're progressing with your with the issue that you were supposed to identify and the solutions that you would be taking up to address that particular issue. So if you remember, we began this in our first workshop itself. You have to identify one water issue that you are very passionate about, that you want to work on. What are the kind of solutions that would maybe help in resolving that particular issue? And and these solutions are things that you would be taking up. So today is the day, because we are down with 4 workshops. Today is the day where we are going to have some discussion around it, where we are going to hear from each one of you on what is that one issue that you have thought about. And then after the breakout room, after we come back, I'll take you through a very short presentation on something called, owning your water story. And I'll tell you why that is important. But maybe before that, Pranav, let's get to breakout room. Maybe you can allot Jatin, you yourself, me in each room.
Okay.
And hear from each one of you in terms of the issue that you're going to take up as a young water champion. So let's say it's 7:30 now. We come back in 20 minutes. Let's hear from each one of you. So, and then we all resume back. So please do stay back, guys. Don't leave. This is very important in your entire workshop series. So this is going to be very important once you graduate as a young water champion. So maybe I'll quickly start. We have another 10 minutes. So welcome back, everyone. So as you know, we got into our breakout rooms. We had some interesting discussion where you shared a certain kind of a problem statement that you would want to work on, and possible solutions that you would have identified. Now, at least in my breakout room, the person who shared, she had some fantastic ideas and she wanted to know whether those ideas are workable or not, right? And the other question that comes is that, ideas to go, this is also an idea, that is also an idea, but how do we do that? What is the way out, right? So first of all, let me begin by saying the idea of this particular program that we are having, the Young Water Champions. The idea is that, we build your technical capacity, but we also support you in identifying the problem, identifying solutions, and driving those solutions by yourself. And as I said, no solution is big or small. Hey, to meaningful solution to hey to बहुत important. Now, this particular time, I will utilize it sharing, some very fundamental things about, what is the problem, right? How do you identify that one issue that you're going to work on?
So আমি যেতিয়া for example water management বা water governance ৰ কথা কওঁ বহুতখিনি it's a vast topic, right? So to say that the issue that I'm going to work on is water management, it would big হৈ যায়. So first of all, we need to think what is the one particular thing that moves us the most. মানে আমি বেছি effect হম বা মোৰ কাৰণে হয়তো এটা floods হ'ব পাৰে, কাৰবাৰ কাৰণে হেতু সাকে groundwater contamination হ'ব পাৰে, right? So it can differ, but you need to choose what moves you, what affects you, what you are very passionate about. হেতু প্ৰথমতে বুজিব লাগিব. Then second kotha hoise aru the way where you can identify the issue is what you are immersed in. Hoyto apni MSc kori ase in a particular domain, you already have knowledge, expertise on it, you are already working on that particular area, and you pick that could also be another way. Then you need to ask yourself ki a issue to problem kya hoy, why is it a problem? So moi jodi kaun ki mu karone flood is the issue, why is flood a problem? This is a defining which I need to do in my mind, right? I need to define flood is a problem because so causal relationship establish. Then who is getting affected and how? That's very important because your problem is not out in the air. You need to identify who are the people getting affected, right? If groundwater contamination is a problem, who are those people? Maybe people in Gauhati town, but a certain kind of a village, because so these are some of the things you have to keep in mind when you are identifying the issue that you want to work on. The solutions, it is very important. Solutions, solutions okay, what is that issue? Flood. Solutions but I have to drive those solutions, right? Solutions that can be meaningful, right? It may not be grand. So what could be those? One kind of solution can be advocacy. Advocacy for change. Advocacy, advocacy. Maybe we go meet up the municipal committee. Maybe we go and meet up the panchayat. Maybe we go meet up some of the officials of ASDMA, flood or current below. And we have an interaction with them. We raise the issue to them, right? We tell them that's what it way to problem. There needs to be some concrete steps. These are the questions we have for you. What is it that you are doing? We need some answers. So this is how you can approach. But approach to advocacy, you'll have to be mindful of how you present the case. You will have to be mindful of who you are approaching. Approach usually, jodi problem to low is you cannot just go on, if you're, let's say, going and meeting a government official, you cannot just go on and say that gap it's a problem. They know the problem, right? You need to highlight how it's getting impacted and what could be the possible ways they can take it up. So, hey, solution or part and when you go, you have to go as a group, because when you go as a group, there is always that collective impact that is presented on the other side. So this is one way you can do. Or both one way for it. Second way is writing. You write, right? Newspaper columns are about that issue, right? You can tap into newspaper columns. You can write in social media. These are the blog create. You prolifically write about those issues. Take help of existing data. Take insights from, let's say, people who are experts in it, right? Ask them, take their bites. So when their bites come, so-and-so person said, so-and-so person expert in this said this. So your article, your blog becomes more rich and powerful. Make use of existing data. So that could be one way. Third is building awareness and capacities. So awareness, for example, groundwater contamination, and that is one solution that you want to attempt to. I want to build awareness. Now, how do we build awareness? There are many ways. बहुत किता channel of communication thake aur platforms o thake. You need to now think of what is that one platform you want to utilize. Let's say Gauhati town or groundwater contamination kotha manhe na jane, I want to build awareness. So let's say you can tap into the schools, you can have these presentations in the schools, or you can reach out to the Gauhati authorities meetings, you can ask them for some time where you can present the case. You can reach out to the panchayat members and you can say that meetings I want to give a presentation on this. So in what platforms were identified a strong case present rather than just saying that we'll build awareness, like identifying exactly kuntu target group hobo kak ami etu korim. Building capacities. So let's say you are already into this particular domain area, you are studying or you are working in it, and you get certified as a young water champion, right? You can also start your Global Shapers Guwahati Hub, right? We have collaborated with Aaranyak and we are driving a building program, and that is how we are to do a similar thing, right? And fourth way can be forming a group for collective impact. Let's say this is one idea actually we were discussing in the breakout room. Can all of you as young water champion come together as a group for a collective impact? Because when you are a group, you can brainstorm ideas, you can drive solutions, right? So can you all come together as a group, right? You all have phenomenal ideas. Instead of working individually and trying to find out ki koribo pari, as a group ki koribo pari, hetu explore kara jabo pare. Kisuman dhoroner solution hobo কিন্তু on ground implementation hobo pare. Rainwater harvesting e kori dilo thorilo. Farming or kiba eta enuka dhoroner practice eta you have done with the support of your community, your neighborhood, your society. You have actually executed that at your level. You can do that as a group. You have executed something on ground. So enuka dhoroner solution hobo pare. And then the last way, last possible way of solution is supporting an existing organization for impactful work. For example, let's say Aaranyak is planning something on in the city of Gauhati, right? And you get to know. So you can approach them, right? You can say that, hey, you know what? I'm trained in this. I know about this. I want to support you. So reach out to them. Reach out to us maybe. So there are organizations who are willing to take in support from people, right? So this is also one way in which you can drive one solution. But be very clear what your problem statement is. Your problem statement to address what are your solutions? And his solutions kita keneke achieve koribo pari. Technical knowledge to apnaloke paye ase through the workshops. He technical knowledge to kuntu way enuka dhoronoke solution to execute kora jabo paribo. He bostu to apnaloke sabo. Now, telling your water story. Now, this is very important. Huh? So, you become a young water champion after you complete this particular training. You get a certificate, right? You have the technical knowledge. Now, you want to drive a change. Kaile apuni kunuba as an official also jabo, kunuba ba kaile kiba ta on ground implementation koribo khujiba ba kunuba ta organization of koi presentation dibo bisaibo ba telokor logot kotha bolibo bisaibo. The first thing is to make them see what you're passionate about and why you're passionate about, and that begins with telling your water story. So it actually is a both established practice hoy junkur environment or climate activists hoy. That's how they connect to that particular target group. Whether you are giving a presentation, whether you are reaching out to a particular official, you have to build that connection. And he connection to build kara jai by telling them the story. The story is your water story. That is, what is the issue? How have you and your community been impacted personally by that issue? This is a kind of flow that you need to develop. So, for example, my simple example goes. Let's say flood. Flood too at an issue I have picked up. As a solution, I thought I want to build awareness. More platform to as a school students. Now, school students would go up in a presentation but at the very beginning, I tell them a story, the story of my community, of myself, where I tell them how my community has been impacted by floods. What is happening? How I bring in narratives from the community. If you all remember, the first exercise where we asked you, right? Ki apnalokor neighborhood at a water source ase jodi hetu bikhoy likhok. Kisumane Brahmaputra por likhile, kisumane kahor pukhuritur bikhoy likhile, right? You pick up from there. pick up from your attachment with Brahmaputra and floodot. Hey, Brahmaputra ki avastha hoy, kenuka dhorona ke communities mein impact hoy. Bring in that story, right? And then when you're telling this story, what is happening is you are immersing that particular listener or audience in that story. They're feeling you that, oh, Manisha is really into this particular thing. She's really feeling this problem. It's not somewhere tai hawate kotha pata nai. There is a problem where her community is facing and she's very convinced about it. Jija story to pose up impact of numbers of and after that talk about ways in which this can be resolved. Ways to dekhabo that people, initially people might become very emotional. Oh God, iman problem ki hobo, oh flood issue ki hobo. But towards your end, when you're telling the story, you can tell them that, all is not, it's not everything is grim. There are solutions to it. And again, we to resolve koribo paro, but for that, we need your support. Right? So, school students are we need your support. Or support to Babu Pari? I have to tell them. These are the ways you can support us. So, are you going to support us? Right? So, this water story, telling the water story is very important. Whether you are approaching an organization, story. So you have to show the impact of addressing this issue. So students, if they are aware, if they can pick up one or two things, key impact. They have to see the bigger picture with you. So this is a journey. You take them from your local, let's say, river that you're very attached with, the impact it's creating, right? How you are getting affected, your community is getting affected too. What are the possibilities, how they can contribute in resolving this issue. So telling the water story. So this comes with practice. Maybe in the next workshop, we can work on this. You can take this time till the next workshop to build your own water story. Then finding the right opportunities to highlight the issue. So, as I said, right, there are different platforms. So, kisuman physical platforms ho pare. You reach out to panchayats, you engage with them, municipalities, right? Jodi relevant rallies or some organizations organize, you can be part of those, be part of local groups, right? You as young water champions can come together, right? So hebor in person apnaloke plan koribo pare to drive the change. Juntu amar media hoy, so digital platform bahut thake. So it was I share korisu here. This is from one of our team members from Global Shapers community. She started this particular this is a digital campaign she started by herself because she was very, very passionate about how floods impacted women. Our flood or relief or that women friendly flood shelters or highlight no. So she, change.org is one digital platform you guys can check out. Jod, as an individual, you can, actually drive this one particular digital campaign and you ask people to sign. So that sign and you promote this in your social media page, you reach out to different groups, organizations. Again, what she made use of in this is her own story, the flood story that she talked about, right? Because she got votes, you see, 1.3 lakh votes from different parts of the world. Written out, why should he or she be interested in what she's talking about? But that was her story, right? That was her, the story that she presented, and these are stories from the ground, right? And then this was successful. This was successful in a way that at least the Assam government recognized that sanitary napkins come in the essential services, flood relief for Pathakoi. So these are some of the ways that you can actually think of. Okay, now the most important thing is, how to present what you are presenting. Presentation, but presentation to powerful, right? These are some of the do's and don'ts. Able was to, it's always at the back of our mind, but it's always important to keep these in mind because no matter what you do, okay, you can think moi eku nokoro karo logot eku matlab nai, moi mur pashola pukuri cleanliness-or karone moi iman khiniye kaam korim. Do that. But he come to koribole jate he aru kita manhoe dekhibo pare je, you're doing a good work. In fact, you have to see that, because apuni aji eta kaam korile, but how do you create that impact so that 3 more people join in, 3 more people see what you're doing, তেওঁলোকেও যাতে কৰিব পাৰে. For that you will have to present your case, right? So one is telling the water story very powerfully and effectively, and then if you're presenting something, these are some essentials. So you have to begin your presentation with your water story. Keep it very simple. Presentation really these are for awareness. If you're giving a presentation, बहुत simple rakho, make use of graphics, make use of data, make use of colors and relevant photographs. আৰু keep it local, okay? মানে এতিয়া যদি মই ফ্লাডৰ কথা ক'বলৈ যাওঁ, মই বহুত কথা ক'ব পাৰো, but মই হয়তো ডিব্ৰুগড়ৰ মোৰ কোনোবা এটা কমিউনিটিত যদি কৈ আছো, I will try my best to bring that topic as much local as possible. যোনটো তেওঁলোকে ৰিলেট কৰিব পাৰে, হয়তো কাষৰ কোনোবা এখন নদী আছে য'ত তেওঁলোকে সদায় গৈয়ে থাকে, দেখিয়ে থাকে, সেইটোৰ এক্সাম্পল মই ল'ব পাৰো। যদি মই গুৱাহাটীত প্ৰেজেন্টেশ্যন দিছো, মই হয়তো ওচৰ ফেন্সি বজাৰৰ কথা মই কৈ পেনেও তেওঁলোকক ক'ব পাৰো, bring in pictures from there, right? So that they can build that connection. It's all about the connection. And then talk about the problem, talk about what, who is your audience? Audience কি কৰিব পাৰিব, সেই বস্তুটোৰ ওপৰত হাইলাইট কৰক, because solutions, এইটো solution আছে, এইটো আছে is good, but what is it, they are sitting here to listen to you to know what they can do to solve that. So সদায় আপোনাৰ presentationত make a connect with your audience, সেই বস্তুটো বহুত important. So these are the basic do's and don'ts that you need to keep in mind, and it forms a very critical part of your skills, because unless you don't have these, it's very difficult to drive a change. And bahut jagah ami Delhi dekhisu, Kolkata, all these cities have a lot of exposure. So in this particular program also, we have tried to create that space where you can actually explore these possibilities, you can actually try doing some of these out. You need any support, we are there to give you. So I end my presentation here. If anyone has any thoughts or questions to ask at this point, please do share. And I hope this was useful for you to think more clearly on what is it that you're going to take up as a young water champion.
I had a query to put forward to you.
Yeah, Bono, go ahead.
As we have reached to this point, the 4th webinar it is today. So will we be getting some study material at the end, okay? So that we can go back to
Burnham, I think I'm not able to get your question. I think we'll
will we be getting any study material at the end of the webinars, actually, for reference purposes?
Can I come in? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
See, if at any point of time, if you feel the need of any specific information,
yes,
any specific reference material, you can always ask for. But I think at the beginning of the whole program, we had shared some study materials, isn't it?
Yes, sir. Means the presentations were going on. In the presentations, whatever I could have jotted down, I have jotted down on a notebook, the brief points.
That you mean
briefly, I have jotted it down.
Okay.
You mean the copy of the presentation, isn't it?
We can share the recordings actually.
That will be good.
We'll share
Yes,
the recordings.
But I think
we have shared some materials. Study material. We already shared.
No. Pranav. Have we not shared the videos already? The link to videos?
Not the recording of this webinar series, but some other webinar as reference, and some other study materials also shared.
No. We must share the videos, I mean the links. I mean, what happens is actually we need to get some of the videos need to be slightly edited and then put in YouTube channel of Aaranyak, and then the links can be given.
Yes.
I think some links have been given from other relevant webinars.
Yes. 3 links are shared. Yes.
Links have been shared.
Yeah.
Now I think, Pranab, it is time to share the links to these 4
Sure, from
videos, these 4
yeah.
webinars of this.
Okay.
That's the first thing. The other thing is, whenever you have asked for the video, that's fine. But apart from there, if you need any information about anything that you can let us know. But the purpose is not to keep on providing you study materials.
Okay.
The purpose is to trigger the thinking process in you, right? The purpose is to make you inquisitive.
Yes.
To make you curious.
Yes.
Right? And make you think originally, right? And for that process, whatever, I mean, I will not encourage you to go on reading a lot. This is an infinite process.
Yes.
It's also an important matter what to read, what not to read at this stage.
Yes.
So whatever we have provided you are selected materials.
Okay.
Once we know about your requirements, we can provide definitely the best of the materials to you.
Okay.
But as I say again, it's better to keep on communicating with us about expressing your needs, that we want to know more about groundwater, aquifer management, this and that, that's and that. Then we have people in our network who will provide you the best of the materials. But let us know, right?
Okay.
But remember that the ultimate purpose is to equip you with good information, quality knowledge, but then also to imbibe in you the spirit of investigation on your own, right? So at the end of it, what we would like you to do here is a group of people who can think about problems around water and environment, who can analyze problems, and who can think about solutions. Right now, do not think about whether the solutions, who will execute them, whether the solutions are going to work or not. That will come at a later stage. But now, whatever comes to your mind, analyze in your mind. And initially, it can seem to be a very silly idea, right? But a very absurd idea. Even you might think that, okay, I have this idea, it may be a very stupid idea, but don't hesitate. Put it forward to us.
Yes.
Discuss about this within the group, with your members and all. And finally, who knows? There could be the seed of a very, very innovative thinking in your idea. Right? So whatever needs to be read and explored, you do, but there is a limit.
Yes.
So at the same time, start thinking, analyzing. I believe more in this actually,
Yes.
Thinking, analyzing, then discussing, then giving voice to your thoughts. Giving voice to your thoughts. This is a good platform.
Yes.
To put your thoughts on the table, right?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. But if you have
Thank you so much for that
information, you can let us know through the group that we need, or if you have any question.
Okay.
If you have any questions, let us know.
Yes. We can. Okay.
Please. That was a very good, very thoughtful presentation, Melissa. Very good. I think they will benefit a lot from this. They will benefit a lot from this.
Yeah. I also suggest you guys get together, like Barnav, Sharmishta, Dheeraj, Mayurakshi. There's Jyotirma. He wanted to join today. He couldn't. Gayatri, Baranya. You guys really, like, you have so many ideas and so much of experience now. Just get together, brainstorm, see where you can take this. And we are there, like Jatin, Himadri, and we are equally as much participants as you are. So we are definitely learning a lot. And we also have a lot to take back to our own hub and think of what kind of projects we can kind of come up with. So let's get together, no? This would be really great.
We will see if towards the end of it, some of us can meet the later stage. And whatever problems you have identified, whatever thoughts you have about their solution or your other kind of views, everything has to be put in black and white. Do not forget. Don't let your thoughts are like, free birds. They will fly away. They will not remain in you. You have to jot it down. And finally, we will give you a template, very brief template, easy to use template, where you can, report your ideas about your problem, your solution, your views and things. Huh? And that will tell us actually, and that will remain with us, that will remain with you. And if some of the ideas are good enough, we can continue to work on that. But keep writing your thoughts, jot them down, note them down whenever you have a good idea.
Sure. Okay. If anyone else has any question, otherwise we can call it a day for today. I hope you liked today's session and also the previous webinars. Yeah, reach out to Partha or me. We'll be sharing the recordings with all of you.
The group is there, no? They can they can speak through the group also. So.
Yeah, please do make use of that as well. All right then.
Wind it up. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, everyone. Take care and let's stay connected and let's keep sharing our ideas. And can we all turn on our videos if it's not a problem? We need to take a picture. We should have done this earlier, but yeah, let's take a picture. We don't have a picture with all of you up there. So maybe you can turn on the video if possible. Is it possible for you to turn on?
Yeah, I am turning it on. For some reason, it's not getting turned on.
Himadri, can you? Okay. All right.
For technical reason, it's not.
No problem. No problem. Okay. Himadri, are you there? Let it be. Let's take a picture. Partha, smile at
Take it. I'm smiling.
Thank you. Great. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Good night.
Good night. Take care.